Let's start there. Joining me now, Paris Denard is a CNN political commentator, former Bush White House director for Black Outreach, and Bill Press is here, host of the Bill Press radio show. Gentlemen, great to have you as always.
Hi, Kate.
Paris, he brought this up himself. What is the president saying when he says people don't ask why there was a civil war?
You know, I think that it's a legitimate question to ask in terms of what led up to the Civil War. Why did we have a Civil War? What went into the mindset of a nation that was so divided to make us get to the point of...
But legitimately, people have asked that for a long time, right? Like while we were in school and such.
I was told the reasons for the Civil War. I think he's asking the American people to ask why. Ask why we got to the point. There was so much division in our nation that we got to this point. I think he was drawing parallels between his candidacy and Andrew Jackson's candidacy, and the deep divisions and the issues that went on between those campaigns, and drawing the parallels between then and now. So I think we should ask the question now, why did the country get to the point where so much division, so much hatred, so much lack of respect for basic human rights, and looking at people that look like me, treating them differently? Why did this happen? Maybe he's saying more people need to ask the question why, especially millennials, especially younger people.
Bill?
Let me just say, with all due respect, that's the most nonsensical statement I've ever heard on any television network. We all know why there was a civil war. It was because the southern states treated people inhumanely. Immoral slavery existed. They refused to give it up. The last thing we need today is to go back and question or fight the Civil War. Thank God it's behind us. It was a shameful moment in our history. We have made great strides since. We have a long way to go. Everybody, I mean, this is the same. Where did Donald Trump get his history degree? From Trump University? I mean, so here he is.
Well, he didn't get a history degree.
Wait. Well, obviously he didn't get a history degree. But here's a man who thinks Frederick Douglass is still out there doing great things, who thinks Barack Obama tapped his phones at Trump Tower, and now who thinks that Andrew Jackson was some role model. Andrew Jackson was a slave owner. Andrew Jackson murdered thousands and thousands of Native Americans. That's how he got to be so famous. And we're holding him up as a role model? I mean, come on. This is the worst Donald Trump, I think, has ever sunk.
I think that
that's quite a statement. Paris, go ahead.
In a day and age when people are still denying the Holocaust and talking about that issue as if it didn't happen, we can go back and ask why Hitler did what he did to exterminate so many Jews. We should ask why so that it never happens again. So it is fair for... It is fair, Bill, for the president to ask the question as to why we had the Civil War, so that it never happens again. So the divisions that we saw then will not happen now. And as it relates to Frederick Douglass, Bill, I was in the room when that happened, and that is not what he was saying.
Hang on. If everyone talks at the same time, I can't hear either of you. Paris, finish.
The only point I was making is we can ask the question why, and we should always ask the questions why and make sure that things like this never happen again.
May I point out,
why bring up the Civil War? I mean, like, legitimately, I do wonder with what, why on earth is the president talking about the causes leading up to the Civil War and saying that Andrew Jackson would have been the guy that would have prevented it from happening when clearly
he died 16 years earlier.
16 years prior.
And he stated that. He said, had he been there longer, had he been there around at that time, he would have made that happen. He acknowledged that Andrew Jackson was not there.
Paris,
but the point is,
whoa. Let me
Bill,
get
you're
in
not.
here.
No, let me finish, Bill. Thank you.
Well, you have 3 times.
Bill, don't interrupt me anymore. The point that
he was making was
the point was that there was division in the country, and there was parallels between his administration and Andrew Jackson's administration, and there was great division in the country during the Civil War time, and there's great division right now. Ask why we got to that point then, so that we cannot get to that point now.
Well, and Bill, you can't deny he has long talked about admiring Andrew Jackson. I mean, that's like the one piece of art he wanted in the Oval Office. He laid a wreath at Andrew Jackson's tomb, I think, like a couple months ago.
True.
I mean, that's not a surprise.
No, he did. I just want to point out the facts matter, okay? The fact is, in that interview, Donald Trump said that Andrew Jackson was very angry about what he saw happening in the Civil War. He talked about him as alive in the Civil War days. So he got it wrong. Let's admit that. And the other thing is, and Kate made this point earlier, I mean, We've been over and over and over the Civil War. This is not a new thing. We know why it happened. Again, it's a shameful moment in our history. The same with the Holocaust. We've been over and over that, and we all condemn that, deplore it. We've all committed ourselves to something like that never happening again. Why would Donald Trump be raising this issue of we're going to re-debate the Civil War? Really?
If we went with Bill's,
have a final word on this one.
If we went with Bill's analogy, let's get away with the Holocaust Museum. Let's do away with the new African American Museum because there's no sense in
I truly do not believe that Bill Press was suggesting to do away with the Holocaust Museum.
He said that these things don't matter.
All I'm saying is we
as
all
much as I don't
know
think Donald
why
Trump was
it
educated
happened.
at Trump University, I do not think Bill Press is trying to say get rid of the Holocaust Museum. I'm just going to say that right now.
Or the African American Museum. We should study it and ask the question why.
Come
fair
on,
question.
get out of here.
No, Bill, I won't get out of here.
No one get out of here, or you're both going to get out of here because I do love you dearly. Let's move on to something that I don't know if this is less anger-inducing or not. Let's try it out. Who knows? The next big fight. You've got after healthcare is you've got tax reform. The big question has been how will the cuts be paid for so not to add to the deficit? This is obviously, I mean, if you say the word deficit hawk, you mostly think of Republicans, right? Yes. Well, listen to the vice president just yesterday and what he had to say about it.
You are going to increase the deficit.
Well, you know, maybe in the short term, but the truth is if we don't get this economy growing at 3% or more, as the president believes that we can, we're never going to meet the obligations that we've made today.
Right, adding to the deficit. It's one thing to say it's going to be paid for by economic growth, which is a theory, but that's a big thing to admit from the Republican vice president that it will add to the deficit maybe in the short term. Is that setting the White House up for a very big problem, Paris, down the road? I mean, are Republicans going to be able to sign on to that?
Listen, I've said from the beginning that this administration is going to upset both Republicans and Democrats because the president does not come from this as an ideologue. I think at the end of the day, what he wants to do is have the best health care plan out there for the American people. And if that adds to the deficit, I think that in a matter of true candor and honesty, he said it may add to the deficit to do that. But these are the tough decisions and tough questions that the president as well as the Congress are going to have to work out to get the best deal for the American people, because the deal we have now is certainly not working and is a bad one.
Right, but Bill, here's the point. Republicans have control of the floor calendar. I mean, are Republicans going to be okay bringing, even if the president strikes the tax reform deal with Democrats, Republicans going to bring that to the floor?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that we do not have a tax reform bill. We don't have a plan. We have a one-page memo that was released by the White House last week in order to get that out before the 100-day mark, number one. Number two, anything that the Trump administration is talking about is going to have to get through a Republican-controlled House and Senate, as we've seen with health care or with a wall. That's not automatic that he gets everything he wants from the Congress. And thirdly, you're absolutely right. The outline we've seen so far, at any rate, there is no consideration for how these tax cuts are going to be paid for other than piling it onto the deficit, onto the national debt, which means our kids are going to pay for it with their credit card. So it totally contradicts everything the Republican Party has said that it stands for. And this idea that tax cuts are going to generate huge economic growth first started by Ronald Reagan. It didn't work for him. It's not going to work for Donald Trump.
Well, we may soon